welcome to your reading for the upcoming July 5th lunar eclipse in Capricorn. So let's get into your reading. I've had a quartz crystal just clearing the energies, and let's find out what is coming up for you. So the way that I tend to view lunar eclipses is as a kind of culmination point. So it can be a kind of an awakening, usually in the heart space, or it can be a clearing out. So it's a sort of the end of a cycle, and this may pertain to you know, some of the events that have happened, being precipitated by the solar eclipses we've had during this Cancer Capricorn series over the last 2 years or so, because this is the last eclipse in the Cancer Capricorn series. But let's see what the geomantic figures have to say. We have had, just as a kind of heads up, we had a solar eclipse in Capricorn back in January of 2019, and then we had another one in December of 2019. So those are just two that kind of solar eclipses that may pertain to, you know, whatever happens at this one. Right. Okay, interesting. So you're kind of going into the energy of this eclipse feeling quite passionate. This is Mars, your ruler, in the sign of Scorpio. So this is its night rulership of Scorpio, which is water energy. So this can be Mars in its slightly more passionate, sometimes obsessive, and occasionally manipulative form. Rubeus itself means red, and it's all about passion. Passion can be a good thing. It can also be destructive, depending on, you know, whether we feel that we have, how consumed we are by it. So on some level you are feeling a little bit passionate, possibly a little bit obsessed about something, or simply you know, perhaps frustrated and angry. So let's find out more. Oh wow, so we've got Rubeus again. That's quite something. So possibly you're feeling annoyed about a family matter. This is home, family, roots, where we live, that kind of thing. So it's possible that on some level you've had a fallout with a family member. You're kind of arguing. Perhaps there's some issue about a home or a property. But certainly you're feeling quite passionate about whatever this is. Gosh. And then we have Amicio. Now Amicio is it's very often to do with loss or kind of a sense of regret. Excuse me. This is Venus in Taurus, so it's from a zodiacal and a planetary point of view. Amicio is kind of a counterpoint to Rubeus, because Taurus and Scorpio are opposite each other in the zodiac, and of course Mars and Venus are kind of the counterpoints, you know, in the planetary pantheon. So on some level, perhaps you know, there's sort of some kind of loss that's happened here, where something is over, and seventh house is usually an important partnership, a significant relationship, seems to be over, and that may be why we've got this Rubeus. Possibly there is some kind of arguments or power struggles around, you know, the home, the family home, or a property, or some kind of inheritance, something that is kind of caused, that's causing a bit of ill will here. So interesting. Right. And we've got Venus again, this time in her Libra, in her sort of air form. So this is Venus in her diurnal sign of Libra. So this is also about relationships. This is Puella. So this is the counterpoint geomantic figure to Puer, which is the sort of Mars figure. So this is about relationships and about harmony. And that's what you want. So this is this is kind of your future goals, your aims, your desires for the for the future. So you want peace, you want harmony, you want balance, you want better relationships. But it seems as though first you have to kind of work through the ending of another relationship or some kind of loss to do with family, or with a relationship that is really kind of getting your hackles up, or were you feeling you having to be quite strategic? But anyway, let's get into this a little bit more. I'm just going to do the rest of the geomantic figures. I'm going to convert them, and then I'll be back with you shortly. Hi Aries, welcome back. I've done your conversions and I've now put all the geomantic figures into the astrological houses. So let's dive into reading. The best place to begin, I think, is the placements of the sun and the moon at this particular lunar eclipse, because I think that's going to be the best place to start. So for you, the eclipse happens in your houses of Cancer and Capricorn. So this means your cardinal houses, actually. So we're talking about the 10th and the 4th house. So this is going to be where Cancer is. So this is where the sun will be at the lunar eclipse, and this is where the moon will be. So that kind of fits actually in terms of the energies that we got here. We've got a feminine energy in your 10th house, and we've got a masculine energy in your 4th house. This is Mars in in Scorpio, and this is Venus in Libra. Now it's interesting because these two particular sort of from a zodiacal point of view, they fall next to each other in the zodiac. So we've got Libra first, which is the house or the sign of relationships, harmony, marriage, and then we've got Scorpio that comes next, which is somewhat more deeper, more kind of darker potentially energy. So this is about kind of things that are below the surface, passion, resentment, all those kind of buried feelings that sometimes relationships tend to bring out in us. They trigger us on many levels. So it does seem as though at this particular eclipse you are on some level having to balance the sort of desire for relationship and harmony in relationships on one hand, and the sort of passion and those very, very strong emotions that can quickly get out of control, like anger, like jealousy, like passion, etc. And you're also having to do so in terms of both your kind of public persona, your career, and your kind of future direction of travel on one hand, and then your roots, your family, and your kind of private sphere on the other. So with the emphasis being on the moon at this particular eclipse, I think that this is really kind of where your emotional energies are going to be. And in fact, it's going to be quite a packed house, this 10th house for you. We're going to have quite a lot in the sign of Capricorn. We've not just got the moon, but we've also got the two planets of Jupiter and Pluto, and they will have just come off a conjunction to each other in Capricorn around about the 30th of June, depending on where you are in the world. And on top of that, Saturn, which rules Capricorn, will have just regressed back into its own sign because it's currently retrograde. So it's kind of gone back. It's gone back through the degrees of Aquarius, and it's now back into Capricorn at this eclipse, and it will remain there until around about December, when it finally moves fully into the sign of Aquarius. So it's kind of interesting that we've got all this sort of concentration of energy. And the thing to say about Jupiter and Pluto is that in many ways this is kind of energy that's come back from Aries season, actually. So the first transit of Jupiter and Pluto was at the 444 gateway on the 4th of April. So this is interestingly a retrograde conjunction, so it's more about internal shifts. And I think what it's saying is that on some level you'll kind of have the opportunity to metamorphose or alchemize any kind of difficult or unresolved emotions like anger and so on into something that is more empowering, that's less self-destructive, because we do have this emissio here in your 7th house, and that can, as I say, be about breakups, separations, loss when it comes to partnership, but it can also be about self-destructiveness. It can be where we tend to sort of trip ourselves up, where we maybe push people away, or where we choose the wrong people, the wrong partners, all that type of thing. Or where we just don't have good relationship skills, let's put it that way. So I kind of feel as though this issue is really kind of coming to the fore at the lunar eclipse. Now I should say from the outset that lunar eclipse energy tends to be much shorter duration than solar eclipse energy. So it tends to kind of last for the 2 weeks that follow the full moon until we get to the sort of new moon energy, and then there tends to be a bit of a reset. It can last for as long as a month, so a lunar month, but it's never usually longer than that, whereas the solar eclipse tends to be the beginning of a 6-month cycle. So as I say, the best thing to see, or the best way to see lunar eclipses is as a clearing out of energies that no longer serve us, so that we can really embrace the new energy that is precipitated by the solar eclipse. So in your case, it does seem as though there is a kind of a clearing out happening, and that this will lead to sort of to greater support, I think, is probably the best way to put this. So I kind of feel as though, you know, if we look at some of the other geomantic figures, we've got Tristia as one of your outcomes, so this is your left judge, and we've got it repeated several times. We've got it in the 11th house, we've got it in the 6th house. So it does seem as though on some level kind of loss or grief or sorrow or remorse seems to be one of the key themes that you're working through at this full moon, and it may relate to whatever this triangle of energy kind of pertains to. Now the 11th house is the house of social connections, so it can be friendships, the groups that we belong to, our political or ideological affiliations. It can be clubs that we're members of. It can also be things like social media, you know, where we connect in the sort of digital domain. And then Tristia is about health. It's about everyday routines and habits. It's also about work on a kind of fundamental everyday level. So it can be work colleagues, and can also be about pets, schedules, you know, that kind of thing. So on some level, it's possible that, you know, one of the things that's causing you a lot of sadness and grief has to do with work. Maybe, you know, there's been an interruption of your ability to work as a result of COVID-19. It could be that your health has suffered. You may have got the virus yourself. And then in the 11th house, maybe there's been some kind of loss of connection, social connection. I do talk about this quite a lot in my Saturn in Aquarius video, actually, about how fundamental social contact is to human beings. So it may be that you're feeling a little bit lonely, a little bit isolated. It could also be that you have perhaps lost friendships as a result of whatever this is, this kind of dispute or this angry energy between, you know, kind of family and significant partners, and yourself. You know, that could be a feature of whatever is going on. I think it's probably also important to point out the time, or the sort of the astrological aspect of this. This is Saturn in Aquarius, so this could have started, this particular situation could have started at the time that Saturn ingressed into Aquarius, which was around about the March equinox, you know, so the start of Aries season. You know, this may have kind of kicked off, and of course that is when COVID-19 really started to sort of become a kind of public concern. So as I said, it may be related to that. It may be related to how the you know, the lockdown has affected both social connections, our ability to socialize, and our ability to actually go out and work, and health, of course. But somehow it has ended up in a situation that is now asking you to balance out the need for peace and harmony and sort of social equilibrium on one hand, and then the more difficult emotions that relationships can engender, particularly family relationships. Let's face it, there's nothing that can trigger us more than family, and this could be what this particular energy is all about, is that you're feeling triggered as a result of some kind of family dynamic. Now, one scenario that I haven't mentioned, but we do possibly need to touch on here, is the possibility that you may have lost somebody, maybe a parent or a family member as a result of COVID-19, and this may be resulting in issues to do with legacies and inheritances. And the reason that I say that is because we've got Fortuna Major both in your 2nd house and your 8th house. Now, these are the 2 houses associated with financial gain. The 8th house in particular is associated with inheritances and legacies, wills, and legal matters to do with that. And the 2nd house is more about earned income. So this tends to be possessions or income that we have earned ourselves through work. Now, here we've got Fortuna Major, which is about gain and about expansion and about success. So, it's possible that you have lost a family member, but this has resulted in gain of some kind, particularly, through a possible inheritance. But of course, this can cause strife amongst family members, and this may be why we've got this difficult rebellious energy here in the 4th house. It can sometimes lead to, wills can be contested or disputed, for example. Now, it is worth saying that, Mercury is currently retrograde and will in fact be retrograde in Cancer, so in this kind of area of your chart, at the full moon lunar eclipse. And, Mercury retrograde can often cause misunderstandings. It can cause miscommunications. It can cause a breakdown in communication, particularly, when it comes to family members. So that could also have something to do with what's going on in this particular area of your chart. But I do feel as though, if we think about where the sun is in terms of fixed stars, the sun will be in the position that Mercury was at when we had the solar eclipse in Cancer. So I think it might be important to just think back to that solar eclipse, because Mercury was making some very important conjunctions to Sirius, which is a really important star in the astrological kind of law. It's the brightest star in our galaxy, so it's a really auspicious star, and so the sun will now be in that position at this particular eclipse. So I do feel as though there is an opportunity here for illumination of some kind, and the illumination may be to do with a past matter. Mercury's retrograde, so it may be that you finally get clarity, or the truth comes out about a particular situation, and this could well be the turning point for you in terms of perhaps healing some rifts or resolving some matters to do with family or your past, because the 4th house can also be about your past. And there is definitely an element here of pivoting, and the reason that I say that is because at the full moon, the lunar, at the eclipse, the moon will be making a trine to Uranus in Taurus. So that's in your 3rd house. No, in your 2nd house, sorry. And so this is usually about positive changes or shifts, particularly emotional shifts. So this is where we can kind of pivot. And, we've got this really positive geomantic figure, which is also solar. This is the sun in Leo. The sun will be in Cancer at the time of the eclipse. So this is the sun in Leo in your 2nd house. So I do really feel as though on some level there's an opportunity here to shift, to shift the way you think about things, and possibly the way you think about yourself, because the 2nd house is not just about possessions and earn income, although it can be, but it's also about how we value ourselves and our values in general. So if we value peace, harmony, and good relationships, for example, then maybe, brooding or kind of backstabbing or kind of being quite sort of vengeful or angry isn't really going to sort of help that situation. That's one way to look at this energy. The other thing, of course, is that we've got Albus in the 12th house. Now, the 12th house has to do with our unconscious state of mind. So this is really, the area of psychology. And here we've got albus. Now, albus means white, and in many respects, it's the kind of counterpoint to rubeus, which means red. So in alchemy, these two things tend to be they're the kind of the two polarities that need to be kind of balanced. And of course, at a full moon or at a lunar eclipse, that's what we're trying to do, is balance energy. So albus is about peace, serenity, detachment, whereas rubeus is about kind of passion. It's about sometimes obsession, but it's about kind of the opposite of detachment, which is kind of like over attachment. And that can be to a point of view, it can be to a person, it can be to an emotion. So I kind of think that, you know, what this is telling us is that there needs to be a kind of cooling of the internal state, and a balancing. So, you know, it's important. You know, passion can be a good thing. It can make us feel alive. It can motivate us. It can give us a sense of purpose. But when it gets out of balance, then it becomes all-consuming. And I think there's a need to sort of reinstate a little bit of detachment, or kind of objectivity, or just a certain degree of, you know, a kind of balancing passion with logic here. And it's interesting because this echoes the counterpoint of the sun and the moon. So the moon is really our emotions, and the sun tends to be associated with our logical, our kind of rational or conscious mind. So you know, that's not all that it's associated with, but at this particular lunar phase, you know, I think that's what it's kind of highlighting. You know, the sun and the moon, the whole lunar phase is actually the sun and the moon kind of dancing with each other. So there's many aspects to the sun and the moon, but I think at this particular one, this is the sort of polarity that needs to be reconciled or healed. And I do think that, you know, if you can kind of get that balance back, then I think things look really positive for you. So, you know, if we look at the three geomantic figures that represent your outcome, we've got Fortuna Minor as your outcome. Now, Fortuna Minor is really about protection or help or support. And, you know, that's usually what family is kind of about, is feeling supported and nurtured, and like someone's got your back, basically. It can also be, yes, I mean, it's about those kind of immaterial forms of gain that, you know, that kind of goodwill and support that money can't buy, basically. And so that is kind of possible, that is attainable. So if you're feeling isolated from friends, if you're feeling kind of low mentally, if you're fighting with family, and if you feel a sense of loss when it comes to significant others, perhaps a marital partner or a significant, you know, relationship, then maybe the key here is, as I say, pivoting to looking at your situation in a new light, seeing the value, seeing like A, what you have to offer, and B, what you have to gain by pivoting, by moving towards a more cooperative kind of way of being, and banishing sorrow, but banishing the sense of depression and illness, and moving back into your own kind of Aries energy. Because, you know, let's not forget that just before this eclipse, Mars, your ruler, will move back into the sign of Aries. So that's kind of like a reset for the planet, and I think potentially you will feel that reset energetically, because this is your planet and sign. This is Aries. So it's almost like coming back to yourself, kind of a reset for you, that allows you to sort of see things in a new light, to take your life in a new direction, to kind of almost have a blank slate. And that is sometimes what Albus is about, is this kind of blank slate. It's a white sheet of paper, so starting fresh. And I think that is, you know, that potentially is the way to go for you. So overcoming any sense of loss or kind of transience in relationships, moving past disputes in, you know, with family, and kind of moving to a happier place. I think that must be your kind of goal. And, you know, for you, I think that involves major shifts mentally. So coming into a place of peace, whether it's through meditation, whether it is some kind of ritual of forgiveness, of saying sorry, of just sort of a kind of a catharsis almost, is what I want to say. And Albus is really about purity, you know. So we could associate it with the albedo in the in the alchemical process, which is the white dove. So this is about purity. You know, it's about separating from what is corrupt, from what is kind of lower, and sort of and kind of ascending up to the higher parts of our nature. And that is what is going to bring you support. It's going to help you to sort of reconnect with your higher nature. So, you know, do see this reading in conjunction with the solar eclipse reading that I did a few weeks ago, because essentially this is the energy that you're clearing out between the lunar eclipse and the 2 weeks that follow, so that, excuse me, you can bring in the positive energy that new cycle that started for you at the solstice eclipse, you know, in Cancer. So don't see this as kind of a life sentence. It's just work that you have to do for the next couple of weeks, and then you're kind of ready to you know, to welcome in that fresh new start. And, you know, as I say, your outcome is positive, so I don't want to overemphasize all the negative. You know, certainly there looks like there's gain for you. So if work has been difficult, things look like they're kind of looking up when it comes to money and finances, and that could also be what helps you to feel better about yourself, not to feel so negative, and that in turn could really positively impact on your relationships, because you may feel then that you have something to give others. That could also be why we've got the 8th house, Fortuna Major here, you know, that you've got something to offer. So I'm quickly going to read you Fortuna Minor. Right, so this is the sun below the horizon. So it is the sun in Leo, and it has, the image is a mountain with a staff or a signpost on top of it. So it is really ascension. It's moving up. You know, even if you look at the geomantic figure, we've got this energy that's coming to a point at the top. You know, a kind of a culmination happening. So fortunate circumstances are the key words. Fortunate circumstances, external protection, help from others. That's what I was saying about support. Swift progress, unexpected shifts, and positive changes. So, you know, again, this sounds quite Uranian. So it could be that some shift in your financial sort of circumstances, perhaps through an inheritance or getting a sort of a new job, may be the key, the linchpin here that really enables you to flip this energy, to pivot and to move into a much more positive frame of mind, to feel more invigorated, more yourself, to feel, you know, that optimistic about the future, and to start moving forward again rather than get stuck in this sort of depressive energy of Tristia. So I hope that's been helpful, Aries. Do leave me a comment in the sort of below if you found this resonates. I'd really appreciate if you hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and do please subscribe, like and share, you know, if you are enjoying these geomantic readings. But I'm wishing you all the best for the upcoming lunar eclipse, and I'll catch you again in a couple of weeks for my new moon reading.